Hey folks, today we are in a town that we absolutely love, Slidell, Louisiana. Me and Lori come over here to do a lot of our shopping just outside of New Orleans. Has all the New Orleans flair, but none of the busyness, so we kind of like it because of that. This is our first time to visit the History Museum here, hoping to learn a whole lot more about Slidell than we knew before, which is not a lot, so we should be in good company. Slidell is home to about 30,000 residents. It was heavily impacted, like a lot of cities in this area, by Hurricane Katrina. And it has an extensive old town with a lot of antique shops. Really a great place, very welcoming people, which is very true to most places in the Mississippi and Louisiana Gulf Coast. Believe it or not, Slidell even has some Disney trivia associated with it. I know, right? November the 22nd, 1963, Disney scouts were in the area looking for the potential of having a theme park in New Orleans East, even scouting areas in Slidell. Now, this never came to fruition, but there was another very important thing that happened on November the 22nd, 1963. That was the day that John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas.
And it's named after John P. Slidell. Does anybody know who John P. Slidell was?
Other than reading just a little bit about him ahead of time, but yeah, no.
Okay, well, if your sixth grade social studies books would tell you about the Mexican War. Mm-hmm. And the Mexican War was fought from 1846 to 1848, and John P. Slidell, who was a leader of the Democratic Party in Louisiana back in the day and a close associate of James K. Polk, was the minister that helped sign the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo that ceded the southwestern United States from Mexico to the United States. And he signed that treaty. And Polk was actually not happy with the treaty. He wanted all of Mexico. And Slidell, being a good white American, said too many dark-skinned people in the rest of Mexico. We don't want all that. So that's how it happened. And then Slidell later joined the Confederacy because he's from Louisiana. And he served as a minister plenipotentiary to Britain and to France. And they sent him to Britain and France to try and get Victoria and Napoleon III to join the Confederacy, or at least support the Confederacy, but he was captured off of a ship. It caused an international incident. Finally, the United States had to let him go. He talked to Napoleon III. Napoleon III said, well, let me see what happens. And that was basically it. Okay? He never set foot in this town.
Oh, interesting.
Wow.
However, if you look behind you, you see the creepy mannequin with the bridal dress. His daughter was married here, and his son-in-law, who honored his father-in-law by naming this town after him, because his son-in-law was an important lumber and brick maker, and as a result of that, this is how it got to be known as Slidell, Louisiana. Okay.
Wow.
What you see here on the with the photograph, that's not the actual wedding dress of Slidell's daughter, but the picture is the actual daughter and wedding dress of Slidell, and it was considered to be the wedding of the century. People came from all over the United States to participate. This guy was pretty well connected. And the computer center is where Textron or mayors of Slidell, people that lived in Slidell, businessmen, doctors, and so forth. We had Salmon. You've heard the name Salmon since you've been here. Salmon was a lumber and brick magnate who made a fortune here. We also had the St. Joe's Brickworks as well, because of the red clay of north of the lake is very good for making bricks. So this was a pretty big industrial place. We also had shipbuilding that was here, right over on Bayou Bonfouca. All right. So you see here all the photographs of people who were doing varieties of works or public drives, such as a World War I victory parade in the late 19-teens. Okay. Now, in addition to that, where you're standing right now is the old firehouse. In fact, if you look outside, you'll see the archway where the fire engine. And this firehouse was a volunteer fire department. So, which meant that there was no firemen staying on duty at all times. If there was a fire, they rang bells, and the people would then come, firemen would come rushing
I was
to get
wondering
in the
what
truck.
that meant.
Okay, and he, the first person that got here got to drive the fire truck out of here. Okay, so that's why you have the fire alarm here. And of course, we're a railroad town. Slidell, very important with the railroad, so we have railroad lanterns as well. We have old milk bottles because, as you know, in the old days, you didn't go buy your milk at the store. The milkman dropped it off, and you left out the empty bottles for the milkman.
Churn your butter.
And you churn your butter in the butter churn right there, yes, by hand cranking. Phonograph that you have here. What you see on the floor here is a cannon. This is a signal cannon. It's not a cannon used to launch, missiles at people or cannonballs. It was designed to help ships that were on and boats on Bayou Bonfouca navigate when it was a foggy day. Shoot the cannon off. This is an original television from the earliest days of television, and you'll notice flat screen.
Interesting.
We went away from the flat screen. We went to the console televisions. That's original leather, and you're welcome to touch as well if you wish. We had a state legislature, Mary Dubazon, who donated her box of where you voted. If you voted yes on a bill, no on a bill, or
Interesting.
all right, and you could also speak. I would like to speak now on this here bill. All right. Various newspaper clippings to show how Slidell operated. We have an old style radio, because as you know, in the old days, there were no podcasts, there were no YouTube videos, there was no television. You sat by the radio and you listened to The Shadow, or whatever the show was, Howdy Doody, or Bob Hope, or Burns and Allen, and so forth.
Dick Tracy.
Dick Tracy, yes, absolutely. Now, from this end of this case, all the way to the end of the far case, this is my favorite part of the exhibit in the whole museum, because everything that you see here, from that end to that end, is now done on your cell phone. Typewriter, cameras, a stenograph machine for a court reporter, okay? This camera was actually made in the former Soviet Union. It's a commie camera, okay? We've got an old rail spike from the railroad. And of course we have the switchboard. And I'm sure you two folks remember Ernestine from Laugh-In, Lily Tomlin with the phone operator. In the old days, you didn't dial the number. You just picked up the phone. And you didn't bring the phone to you. You went to the phone. You picked up the phone and said, operator, get me Dr. Cook, or operator, get me the general store, or operator, get me the police. And there was a person on the line. They'd say, okay, they'd have their headset and everything like that, and they'd snort at you, and it was, that's how it was done.
My dad knows that well. He's retired from South Central Bell.
Okay.
Yeah.
There was the film projectors and an old style voice recorder. That's a wax tube. You would literally put your voice into there, and it would impress on the wax tube, and then you'd move it over to the phonograph. And you also had radios that you could use for ham radio operations and so forth. Now, this shelf right here is a donation by the clerk of court. It's Louisiana civil law. For those, you're not from Louisiana originally. Louisiana civil law is different than the rest of the nations. It's based on the old Napoleonic Code. In 1808, we wrote in the Napoleonic Code. English common law, which is what the rest of the states go on, you use the decisions of a previous judge who ruled on a case. You say, okay, well, that's how that judge ruled. Seems to make sense, we're going to do that. Not in Louisiana. What they did is, any sort of civil action that takes place, they wrote a law for it, so that the judge would not have a previous case to go on. He'd simply pull the law book out. Say, okay, man suing another man for killing his donkey. Okay, what do you get for killing a donkey? Okay, that sort of thing. All right, that's Napoleonic style code. All right, that's one of the gifts of Napoleon. All right, now we're moving from the firehouse into the jail. So y'all are going to jail now. Okay? Now in here we'll have the jail cells. We'll have the exhibits of some of the ordinances that Slidell passed back in the day. And in each of the jail cells there's an exhibit. And don't worry, you can't get locked in the jail cell. All right, we've taken all those bolts out. All right, so please follow me. This is the oldest part of the building we're entering into now. The firehouse was added on later on. This is a list of all the mayors from the beginning of Slidell in 1888 all the way to the present time, although Greg Cromer is no longer the mayor. Bill Borchett is the mayor because Greg Cromer is going to work for the governor of Louisiana. You see some of the ordinances we had here, some of the salaries and budgets, anything that was considered unlawful. You have to go get permits before you start building something. You can't tell a police officer off in the performance of his duty. You have, the mayor can appoint temporary police officers and things like that. First World War, because of its manufacturing and shipbuilding, and these are some of the troops that came through Slidell. A certificate given to the city of Slidell during the World War. Notice it doesn't say World War I because they hadn't been World War II yet.
Yeah.
So they simply called it the Great War or the World War.
Is that canon out there? Is that from about World War I?
It's about that time, yes.
Yeah. That's so interesting.
And this is a time capsule that we're going to open up in about 100 years.
Yeah, and a few weeks ago, I went through Alexandria, and they were talking about how many troops had came through that area to train.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, Fort Polk, Fort Beauregard. Cells are set up for exhibits. This jail cell, which I easily go into because I'm not going to get locked into, has some of the notable persons of Slidell history in some ways. And this gentleman right here is the man himself. That is John P. Slidell. And there's a couple of other newspaper photographs of him as well. And of course, we've got Lincoln and Jefferson Davis. We also have a display showing the soldiers that served in the wars from the city of Slidell. And we also had a very strong Boy Scout tradition here because Camp Salmon, which is right over the past Front Street on Gause Boulevard, was the place I went to as a boy when I was in the Boy Scout. It's not a camp anymore. It's a nature area. They moved the Boy Scout camp to Hancock County, Mississippi, and that's where it is now. But you can see some of the things, and then of course we have a 20-star blue flag representing those scouts that served in the war. When you have a soldier in the war, you get a blue star as a family. Prisoners would lay down when they were brought in. In Louisiana, in Slidell, are famous. Louisiana, incarcerates more people per capita. So have any of y'all ever seen a movie called Escape from Alcatraz with Clint Eastwood? Clint Eastwood played Frank Morris, who escaped from Alcatraz. We think he drowned at the bottom of San Francisco Bay, or did he? Frank Morris stayed in this jail as well. Now, Frank Morris was not a murderer. He was an armed robber, and he was skilled at escaping. And he and two brothers escaped from Alcatraz, but we don't know what happened to them. We think they drowned. And
how long was he in this jail?
Just for a few months. He was transferred. The federal government wanted him more because Alcatraz was a federal prison. And now the current president wants to see if he can't get it reopened.
That's right.
He said he wanted to do that. Names of all the prisoners that were kept in here. Of course, this is the day before Excel spreadsheets and so forth. So they were all handwritten in. These are the actual keys to the locks when the locks were here. Those are actual handcuffs that they would bring prisoners in and out of the jail. And then finally here, the most notorious pest of them all in Louisiana is not a prisoner, not a criminal, it's the mosquito. The mosquito is without a doubt the worst thing God ever created. Well, when prisoners were in here, there was no air conditioning, and there was plenty of holes for mosquitoes to get in, and so when you slept on the bunk, you had a mosquito net over that as well. And it used a variety of pesticides and traps and so forth, because as you well know, in the old days, mosquitoes carried the most vile disease of them all, yellow fever, along with other things. Now we have West Nile. This is Napoleon Leon Fremo, and they have a street named after him. Originally they said, we wanted to name it either Jefferson Davis Street or Robert E. Lee Street. And Fremo said, no, you name it after me. And thus it became Fremo Avenue. And so what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to let you all just circle around, look at whatever photograph, whatever picture you want. Come back to me at my desk, ask me a question or two, and when you're all finished, I'm going to tell you one of the deep, dark secrets of Slidell history.
What's thought of as a crime, what's thought of as not a crime.
In 1907, it was unlawful for women to enter patronize the land.
Slidell's deep dark secret when we go to the lake. That seems like a good slogan.
So we're gonna open that in 2112. I mean,
COVID-19.
Y'all enjoying yourselves?
Yes, thank you.
Good.
Of course, Burlington, they had bank, grocery store, several different mom and pop businesses all.
Or costumes and things like that, but we haven't really set them
Got
up
into
for
that.
display. I've only been here 3.5 weeks, and I'm really more of a placeholder for the person that they're going to hire full-time, because I'm a professor at UNO full-time.
Awesome. Jackson Jr. was on a hunt, accidentally shot himself with his own gun. And,
Stuff it doesn't like to talk about. Slidell's no different, but Slidell's deep dark secret is actually well known, even in places like Brazil and in Slovenia, places like that. And this is the story of Onion Head. Onion Head was a young man who was born to a woman who practiced medicine in the woods. She was called a traiteur. It looks like trader in French, but it's actually a sort of a mix between a voodoo priestess and a Indian sort of medicine healer and so forth. But he was disfigured at birth, and he had a very horribly misshapen head. And the residents of the town took to calling him Onion Head as a result of it, which was a terrible thing. And Onion Head lived out in the woods and kept pretty much to himself, didn't come into town all that much because of the opprobrium he got from the residents. Well, a 13-year-old girl was brutally murdered, and they didn't know who did it at first, and the town went into a frenzy thinking that it was Onion Head. And so they formed a posse without any sort of official acts or anything, and went storming into the woods looking for Onion Head. They assaulted his mother at her house. She said, I don't know where he is. And they brought dogs, and they finally cornered him in a ditch. And the mob mentality took over. They killed him and buried him. Not long after this, the leaders, several leaders of the posse were found dead in very grisly ways. And apparently, according to the legend, that there was a note next to them that says, "If you were there when it happened, I will come for you." Signed Onion Head. Now, what's truth? What's legend? We do know that there was a young man who was disfigured in the woods. We do know that there was a young girl who was killed. We also know that when the posse got back into town, they found that the police chief and the sheriff had arrested the man who actually did the murder. And we do know that some of the leaders of the posse did get killed in various gruesome ways. Was there a note? We don't know. But that's the story of Onion Head. Now, this is not the picture of Onion Head. This is a representation of what somebody would have said Onion Head would have looked like. But I want you to take that image home with you.
Oh, wow.
Okay? When you think about things at night, your last memory of the Slidell Museum will be of Onion Head. But this is a legend that has actually gone around the world. And that's the thing about these legends, these rumors, these stories, is that they take on a life of their own. And every community has that sort of thing. And so there's Onion Head. What he probably would have looked like, not like this. If y'all saw the Lord of the Rings movies,
Yeah.
the Uber Orc in the one that spits at the rock after it misses him. Okay, Gothmog is that guy. That's what he probably would have looked like. Okay.
Wilmer Paulson was in Hattiesburg, so I would come down and interact with that group a lot, and never thought eventually would live in this area at one time. I've always loved Louisiana. We always visit New Orleans once or twice. You did an excellent job. Kept it very interesting.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you very much.
Folks, as always, thank you so much for watching. Appreciate you going through this tour with us through Slidell, Louisiana. We had a lot of fun. I hope you did too. It was really a pleasure going through it with Professor John Fitzmorris. He is a New Orleans native and was just the acting curator here in Slidell while they were looking for a permanent replacement. And they have found that. But it was really fun getting to talk to him and going through this tour with him. Thanks, everybody. Have a fantastic day. Appreciate everything that you do for this channel. I've been Aaron with Passing Through Productions. You've been passing through with us, and we greatly appreciate it.